Hello everyone, today we are talking about a campaign setting that is actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and that is the setting of Greyhawk. This is the very first campaign setting to ever exist in D&D.
Well, the Dungeon Master's Guide is releasing in the 50th anniversary year of D&D, and there are sort of little bits of nostalgia scattered throughout the book, but the biggest piece is this setting. Early on, I remember conversations talking about we definitely want to put a campaign setting in the book because it's never been done before, and it's always better to show somebody by example how to do something than just have them kind of imagine it in the abstract. So, thinking about the campaign and thinking, what campaign could we insert into this book that is sort of hits all the keynotes of D&D while at the same time being concise and short. And Greyhawk immediately popped into mind because it was the first published campaign setting ever for D&D. So in a year of celebrating D&D's legacy, it made sense, hey, why don't we do something with Greyhawk? This is a setting that's been lied fallow for a number of years. So a whole new audience of D&D players are out there who have never actually had contact with it. And yet it has been foundational. It is the granddaddy of campaign settings. It is the campaign setting that taught people like me how to make a campaign setting. And so what better campaign setting to throw into a book about being a DM and creating your own stuff. This setting was created by Gary Gygax. He's one of the founders of D&D. It was created for Gary's home campaign back in the 70s and first released as a product in 1980. It was a very thin folder with a book inside it and fold-out poster maps. The book, I think, was about 32 pages, so it was tight. Not like the campaign settings we think of today, which are big, thick, huge tomes.
10 times that size.
Exactly. And so I went back through my copy of that and looked at it and tried to figure out what was it about this that I fell in love with? Why do I think this is a good idea to bring back? And one of the things that struck me was how sort of unburdened it was by detail. It deliberately left a lot for the DM to make their own. You got a map with some place names on it. You got like a short little description of each place, including some material that's probably pretty irrelevant unless you're into wargaming. Like, oh, this nation has 1,000 infantrymen, whereas this nation has 3,000 infantrymen and a cavalry.
And these are the weapons they use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going back through it again, I fell in love with it again because I loved the leanness of it. I love that, okay, you're giving me, the DM, all this stuff to play with and make my own. And I thought that we could turn that into a really interesting part of the campaign's chapter.
So the way we present it is very much like the way we tell you how to make a campaign. Start with the place where the characters are starting their adventures. That the city of Greyhawk and the surrounding area get a little more detail so that you can start characters there. The sample adventures in Chapter 4 have locations there just outside the city so you can be interacting with the environment. And the farther out you get from the city, the more kind of vague it is, because that's all you need, whether you're running in Greyhawk or running in a campaign of your own. Start with sketchy details at best. Have some idea of the conflicts that are going on in the world around the characters and how those are going to impact their adventures, and then let the adventurers take you where they want to go.
Another thing that super excited me about Greyhawk was a chance to revisit the map and do an updated version of it. And it's very faithful to the original with a few little tweaks here and there. And then also use the city of Greyhawk as kind of an example of what a campaign hub can be, a place where a campaign can start and be built around until such time as the characters and their adventures lead them elsewhere. That's something we've never done in a DMG before, is actually present a fleshed out campaign hub. Here is a map of the city. Here are descriptions of locations that characters are likely to frequent or at least go to once or twice, like the magic item shop, the library, a tavern, 2 taverns actually, 3 taverns. There are temples. So if you come back a little beaten up and you need some healing, or Bob the wizard died and you need him brought back from the dead, it tells you in the city how you deal with that. Now, this campaign setting in its original form is 50 years old. For this book, because of the space that we had to fill, we made some judicious sort of choices about things to focus on and things not to focus on. To James's point, making sure that we give enough detail that the city feels like a DM can pick it up and run with it, that the world and its map, the DM feels like they could pick it up and run with it. But we also wanted to contemporize a few things, make the conflicts feel like they would resonate in all D&D campaigns, make sure that we have a good balance of NPCs who sort of show the beautiful diversity of the worlds of D&D. So we took a few liberties while remaining very, very faithful to the spirit of the setting.
One of the ideas we brought out in the City of Greyhawk description, I've had this idea in my head from the early days of 5th edition that character backgrounds are a way to, there's a finite list of backgrounds in the player's handbook, and it's very easy as a DM to take those backgrounds and map them to things in the world to give characters a hook into the world. So these locations in the city, each one of them has a mention of, hey, a character with these backgrounds might have an inn at this place, just so that as a DM you can just hook the characters in and make that, give them a connection to a place in the world.
Yeah, like if you've got a character who's got the soldier background and you're using the City of Greyhawk as your starting place, it's not hard to imagine that character actually served in the City Guard. And how does the DM kind of bake that into their campaign and make that background and the city sort of conjoined?
Obviously, this entire Dungeon Master's Guide isn't the Greyhawk setting, but there is a lot of detail here. So even though you do mention like you can make Greyhawk your own, this is not like, I wouldn't call it necessarily a bare skeleton. There are the cities described, there are adventure hooks, there are things that you should know about neighborhoods in here. I mean, there's even a reference to why we have Unearthed Arcana at all.
Morley.
Yeah,
Yes.
Morley is referenced in this. So there's a lot of deep cuts, deep lore. So this is like great for someone who's new and needs a new campaign setting, or this is also fantastic for someone who's just old school D&D.
Yeah, I think we've sort of hit the happy ground where we give you enough information that you feel like, okay, I can go off and create my own content now. And we've given you examples of conflicts that you can build within the campaign. We've given you examples of locations in the city and how you can actually construct them. We've given you a number of places outside the city, as well as a map of the area around the city, so that can inspire you as a DM and go, oh, I want to put an adventure in the Cairn Hills because that sounds cool. I've only got a paragraph of text telling me what they are, but there's enough there that I can go, oh yeah, they're going to go to a dwarven crypt and they're going to go after this item before the evil servants of Ayuz catch up to them and take it. And I think that I'm very happy with how all the Greyhawk material came together to be useful without being daunting.
Yeah, I mean, often the problem with a campaign setting is like you feel like you have to master everything that's in those 320 pages before you're qualified to run an adventure in that setting. There isn't 320 pages here, there's 32-ish, and you don't have to master it. You can peruse it and get inspiration. There is more detail in the city itself and a little bit more in the region outside. The further out you get, the sketchier it is. For each sort of region of the continent around the city, we talk about what are the things going on here, what are the kinds of adventures you might tell in this place. Like if you're in the eastern Flanaess, where the Great Kingdom is still clinging on after years of losing territory to rebellious states in the west, what are the kinds of adventures you might have there? You might play out a war campaign where the scrappy rebels are fighting the evil empire. Or if you're in the city itself, you might deal with supernatural horror because the Overking has deals with fiends. Or if you're on the high seas in the RDC or in the Lordship of the Isles, you might have a swashbucklery pirate campaign as the naval powers fight against each other. So we sort of point you in a direction of themes and flavors you can explore without bogging you down in details you feel like you have to master.
No, this is like stuff that I adore. Like you do list like the gods of Greyhawk, and you have nice brief descriptions. You have, like, if you look at Central Flanaess, you have like, here's the location, here's the ruler, here's the description, and you just break it down. So I don't feel like there's a lack of information. This feels very in-depth for being around 30 pages, but it's the right framework.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm missing out on information.
Yes, correct. And even though we sort of focus on 3 conflicts that we think are kind of iconic to D&D and or Greyhawk, if you dig down just a little bit into the content, you can see that there's many, many more possibilities that can be unlocked. A creative DM can take a corner of this map and just go hog wild and run a very distinctive campaign there.
Yeah, there's a lot of different like political organizations. We've got some of the big bads, the elemental evil, for an example.
Elemental evil is a sort of classic faceless adversary in D&D and in Greyhawk lore. It's certainly iconic to Greyhawk. Greyhawk fans know elemental evil. They also know Ayuz, the evil Cambion demigod who has carved out a kingdom for himself in one part of the map, and the havoc that kingdom is causing to all of its neighbors. In focusing on the 3 main conflicts, what we wanted to do is make sure that they all had a very different feel. The Ayuz, hey, there's this evil, super bad guy basically planted on the map. He is going to conquer a whole bunch of nations unless characters intervene and stop him. The forces at his command are just utterly evil and beyond redemption. And so you can make powerful allies in your battle against Ayuz to take him down. On the other hand, the elemental evil story is very different. It's about these secret cults operating kind of below the surface of the world, gathering lore that they can use to unlock evil creatures that have been hidden away in the depths of dungeons, trapped there, primordial beings, demon lords. And they're just doing it for kind of nihilistic reasons to kind of get the world back to a more primeval, or not primeval, but primordial state. And so it isn't a singular villain. It's all these cells kind of operating independently. And then the third conflict that we lean on is the dragons conflict, which in a game that's called Dungeons and Dragons, I think if one of the conflicts did not center around dragons, that would feel like a miss.
Would have been a miss.
Exactly. And so what are evil dragons on this continent doing? The answer to that question is the seed of that particular conflict.
If you have players who are jumping in, you don't need to know the world of Greyhawk. You have a living history section, which is the part of the fun of being in a setting is not that you need to know everything, that you have these touch points in the campaign and you learn the history of something.
One of the 3 pillars of the game that we talk about is exploration. And a big part of what exploration is, anytime you're going into a dungeon, there's always this sort of, what is this place? Who built it and why? And often you're sort of uncovering the mystery of the location that you're exploring. That living history sidebar is really all about ways to pull back the curtain on the history of your world and give your players that sense of discovery as they're exploring whatever setting they're in. The real focus of the Greyhawk section of this chapter is to illustrate what we've been talking about throughout the rest of really the book and especially the campaigns chapter.
It's like every paragraph feels like an adventure hook in the description of Greyhawk. It's very fun. Like this, I read it, I stop. And I think, ooh, that would be fun as this kind of adventure. Or we could like explore this.
Mission accomplished.
Yes.
Made for me.
Right, yes.
Hopefully other people have the same reaction.
I think they will. It's a very welcoming, non-threatening campaign and eminently customizable. It's very easy to take Greyhawk and make it your own. And I know this because hundreds upon thousands of DMs have already done so over the years. We're just reintroducing this beloved campaign that's so that other people can have that same joy.
What makes it iconic? Are there like I don't want to say tropes necessarily.
Yeah.
But there are things you expect in a fantasy setting, in
Yes.
a fantasy campaign setting, and Greyhawk hits these.
Right. And one of the powers of being the first campaign setting is back then it was all new.
Yeah.
It was creating the tropes.
Yeah.
And so I think the power of the setting is that it feels very straight down the fairway D&D. It's got the pillars of exploration, social interaction, combat. It's got dungeons and nations at war, and nations at peace, and dragons, and all the monsters in the monster manual have a home here, and all the magic items in the DMG have a home here. And many of the names of figures from the history of D&D who have created spells and magic items in the game, they all came from here. Mordenkainen, Tasha, Autaluk. These are storied figures in D&D's history, and if you're ever wondering where they came from, wonder no more. This is the world of Mordenkainen. This is the world of Tasha. This is the world of Bigby, and many, many great heroes who have followed in their footsteps. I think the success of Greyhawk is it feels like classic, iconic D&D, and it has all of the core D&D tropes.
There's always a charm to looking at a map too, like a campaign setting map.
I love looking at campaign setting maps. I could just stare at maps all day.
Yeah, because I wonder, like, what if we can go to here? What will we find there?
Right. One of the things we did on this particular map, as kind of a bit of an Easter egg, but also just for pure joy, is put locations on the map that have ties to D&D's legacy, its history, some key dungeons, for instance.
White Plume Mountain, the Tomb of Horrors, Lost Caverns of Sajcon.
The Ghost Tower of Inverness.
Yep.
These are places that aren't dealt with in detail in this chapter, but long-time Greyhawk fans will feel all warm and cuddly inside, seeing the Tomb of Horrors appears on the map. And hopefully it spurs further investigation into D&D's past.
Some of which has been touched on in recent D&D history, and the book tells you that
Yes.
White Plume Mountain is detailed in Tales from the Awning Portal.
Truly.
Barrier Peaks was in Greyhawk as well, technically. And we recently have revamped that adventure and enhanced that adventure.
Yes, in Quest from the Infinite Staircase.
Yeah. So we have a lot of these. A lot of the adventures that are very key to Greyhawk are in those two books.
Exactly. Yes, many of our adventure anthologies for 5th edition have within their covers Greyhawk adventures just waiting to be run. So we got Tales from the Awning Portal is a big one, and that's got several classic Greyhawk adventures. We've got Quest from the Infinite Staircase. Even Ghosts of Saltmarsh has some originally Greyhawk adventures, because Saltmarsh is in the Greyhawk setting.
Perfect. Thank you so much for letting us know more about Greyhawk. It's the right amount of information. I'm very excited for this.
And we left in a couple of little quirky things because it's so part and parcel of the world. Like back in the 70s, it was very fashionable to create fantasy worlds that had their own days of the week, that had more than one moon.
Yeah.
And so there's some of that to glom onto if you're into that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for watching. Every week leading up to the brand new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we'll have new videos and premieres telling you more about the book. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, digital dragon art book, and the digital golden dragon mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.